Good afternoon again.
Good afternoon, sir.
Mr. Hasselback, thank you for coming back.
Not a problem.
Counsel, do I have to put him under oath again?
I don't mind, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hasselback. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Vice Speaker, you have the floor.
How are you to Representative Torres for now?
Rep. Torres.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Hasselback, you used to work for the Attorney General Buckingham, correct?
That's right, sir.
Attorney General, the former Attorney General Buckingham appointed to the position of Acting Chief Prosecutor.
That's correct, sir.
Did he deny you to be a permanent appointment as Chief Prosecutor?
About 3 months after I took the position, Mr. Buckingham informed me that he had selected Rosamond Santos as the Chief Prosecutor, and he reassigned me back to prosecuting domestic violence crimes.
He never appointed you as a permanent, right?
No, he did not, sir.
When you left the office of the Attorney General, was one of the reasons for leaving the fact that A.G. Buckingham had terminated a friend of yours?
No, sir, it was not.
Joseph Przyjewski, I'm not sure if I say that correct.
That's as close as I can come, sir. So,
Worked for OPA as a lawyer,
yes, he did, sir.
and Mr. Przyjewski used to work in the Criminal Division of the Office of Attorney General as a Special Assistant Attorney General.
My understanding, sir, when I began at the Attorney General's office, there was an agreement between the Office of the Public Auditor and the Office of the Attorney General, where one of the attorneys from OPA was designated as a Special Assistant Attorney General or something to that effect. And he was assigned to a white-collar public corruption task force. So he had an office down in the Criminal Division. He was given the rights and responsibilities of an Assistant Attorney General, but I believe he still worked for OPA. He just was housed down at the Criminal Division. I don't think he actually ever worked for the Criminal Division, but I could be mistaken.
But he was hired primarily for OPA?
My understanding, sir, is he worked for OPA, but his assignment was to that task force, and he investigated, my understanding is he investigated public corruption, white-collar crime cases, and prosecuted them as an Assistant Attorney General would.
But then what happened? Is he removed from the office by Buckingham?
When Mr. Buckingham took over as the Attorney General, Mr. Buckingham dissolved that relationship with OPA, and Mr. Brzezinski returned back to the Office of the Public Auditor.
But he was never removed by Mr. Buckingham as a Special Assistant AG, right?
No, my understanding is that he was a Special Assistant Attorney General pursuant to this relationship between the two offices, and when that relationship dissolved, Mr. Brzezinski's status as an Assistant Attorney General dissolved as well.
So your answer is no?
Well, he wasn't terminated or anything like that. He was
Dissolved?
He was an assistant attorney general, an acting assistant attorney general for a period of time, but when that public corruption, white-collar crime task force, and I don't remember if I'm using the right term or not, but when that was eliminated, Mr. Brzezinski's status as a acting assistant attorney general was eliminated as well, and he went back to being OPA's legal counsel, and he moved back up to the OPA office.
Okay, now in the next line is, do you know if James Taylor works for OPA as a lawyer?
Yes, Jim Taylor is currently employed as the other legal counsel for OPA.
And assigned to what? Like what you're doing now?
No, sir. He primarily handles the procurement side of the house. His primary duty assignments include reviewing procurement appeals. As you all know, OPA is the appellate body for procurement protests. And Mr. Taylor reviews those protests, and primarily his job is to advise the public auditor on procurement issues.
And he also used to work for the AG office, right?
Yes, sir, he did.
As what?
He was my understanding was he was an assistant attorney general in the civil division.
And you also know that Madame Atalik Juanet David also worked for the OPA as an investigator before you joined the OPA?
Yes, sir. She was working there when I got there in February.
You know that she used to work for the AG office too?
Yes, sir. She worked as an investigator with the AGIU, the investigative unit down there.
Now, do you know that Attorney General, or did you know that AG Buckingham terminated the service of Juanet Atalik?
My understanding, sir, is that her contract ran out and was not renewed.
And that's yes, right?
I'm sorry?
That's his answer to... Your answer is yes?
Yes, sir. I
Now I
again...
know of the contract is termination, right?
No, sir. My understanding is that her contract expired and she was not renewed.
Okay.
And I have no personal knowledge of these matters. I'm just going based upon what these individuals have told me.
Okay.
Just for the sake of my understanding, is there a difference?
Again, generally speaking, when you're talking about employment contracts, a termination means somebody is let go prior to the expiration of their contract. We call it being fired. I'm sorry, but it's not a legal term, so it's not one I like to use. But if somebody is terminated, if a contract is terminated, it's cut off before it expires. Legally speaking, that has there's a significant difference between that and not renewing a contract after it expires. They're two very different things.
Thank you for the clarification. Please proceed.
Okay. No, Mr. Hasselback. Mr. John Santos or Juan Santos works at OPA as is the OPA chief investigator?
Yes, sir, he does.
He's the most senior investigator besides you, right?
Yes, sir, he is. I'm not an investigator. We haven't quite figured out what my title is yet, but I'm the supervisor in charge of the investigators. There are 3 of them. Mr. Santos is the most senior, and we call him the chief investigator.
Mm-hmm. So the answer is yes, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, I don't know if you know if it's true that Attorney General Buckingham prosecuted Juan Santos for illegal purchasing of ammunition.
I don't know anything directly about that, sir.
Or you never heard or read in the paper?
There was something in the paper about it, but I don't have any specific recollection of what happened.
So your answer is no, no? No?
Yeah, I had heard about it. I don't know anything more than that about it.
Okay, thank you. Chair?
Chair, I'm waiting for the punchline here.
No, I yield to my colleague too, if anybody, I have another one, but it's going to take a while.
So you yield your time to the Vice Speaker. Vice, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to take us back to that mysterious document, and also the cover letter to that mysterious document.
What mysterious document are you referring to, ma'am?
We're talking about the document that was sent, the investigative activity report by the Office of the Inspector General. Let me just leave it at that. I'm just making a reference here. It has nothing to do with you. But, Mr. Chairman, the cover letter that was given to Mr. Herman Sablan, the Director of Procurement and Supply, indicated that the OPA intends to rely on the attached investigative report in making its findings and recommendations. And the attached investigative report is what was prepared by the Office of Inspector General from the U.S. Department of the Interior, dated December 7, 2010. You're familiar with you have a copy of what I'm referring to?
Yes.
Mr. Hasselback?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
So if I understand correctly, before you put together your report of findings and recommendations on the ARA contract, the basis for your report would be the investigative activity report prepared by the Office of Inspector General, dated December 7, 2010.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's go to that report, the investigative activity report, and can you tell me, just reading that report, if there's anything there that, I mean, you can point out to me, where does it say that Mr. Sablan or that there was any violation of our ethics law?
You're asking me about the investigative activity report that speaks about the interview with Mr. Herman Sablan?
That's correct.
Well, ma'am, that's not the only document prepared by Special Agent House that I relied upon as a basis for the criminal charges that I filed, and that's also not the only document prepared by Agent House that I'll be relying upon when and if we finalize a report for this investigation.
I do understand that.
Okay?
But this would be one of the very key report that you will be relying on when you put together your final report that would support the prosecution that you have undertaken.
I would not, pardon me, my
I'm not
throat's...
saying that this is the only report, but this is one of the reports that you will be looking at.
I would not characterize it as a key report, but yes, I would say that this is one of the reports that this is one of the documents that we are relying upon, yes. Thank you very much.
So, looking at the report, can you point out where in the report does it say that there is a violation of our ethics law?
Looking at which report, ma'am?
I'm talking about the investigative activity report, upon which you will base your final report, findings and recommendations, somewhat similar to what was prepared on the meet and greet event at the governor's office, governor's residence. Can you just point out,
Ma'am,
for my information?
Well, ma'am, I think you're asking for something that's not there. The investigative activity report is the way I read it, it is a preliminary memorialization of what a certain person said. There are no conclusions of law contained in the investigative activity report.
So you're telling the committee that these are not conclusions?
No, ma'am. I'm telling the committee that there's no legal analysis contained in the investigative activity report. The legal analysis, the final legal analysis is contained in part in the, I have to get the date, pardon me, in the report of investigation dated July 14th, 2011. There is a specific section under that report. Let me find the page for you. There's a specific section under that report that says, pardon me, ma'am, on page 3 of the, I have to get the titles right because there's a couple of reports now that we're speaking about. Originally, we provided the committee with a July 11th, 2011 document called Report of Investigation, prepared by Special Agent House. That document on page 3 has a bold statement about a quarter of an inch, or maybe an inch down from the top of the page, that says, violations of CNMI ethics rules and ethics in public contracting. It points out 4 specific statutes and several portions of the procurement and supply regulations that Special Agent House concluded were violated, or that the evidence suggested were violated. In reviewing that report, I agree with Special Agent House, and that is the analysis, and those are the facts upon which I based the charges and the information and amended information that I filed against former Attorney General Buckingham. And if you'll note, ma'am, the majority of the facts relied upon in Special Agent House's report of investigation came from interviews that he conducted with 3 people, those people being Mr. Atta, former Attorney General Buckingham, and Governor Fitial. I won't bore the panel by reading the specifics, but it's contained in that report.
This is the same report that was used as a basis for the decision of the U.S. Attorney's Office for Guam and the CNMI that there is no further need to prosecute the investigation because of lack of evidence that the contract violated federal rules, federal laws, statutes.
Yes, ma'am. This is the document upon which the U.S. Attorney's Office declined to prosecute. But please keep in mind that the U.S. Attorney's Office made no determination about whether or not local laws were violated. They simply declined to prosecute anything federally.
So when are you coming in with your final report of this investigation?
As I explained before, ma'am, the track that we took in our office was not to make a recommendation of remedial action. We had that option. We could have made a recommendation of remedial action, and we may still make a recommendation of remedial action. However, as events transpired, it became imperative that we file a criminal information against the former Attorney General. As I've explained to this committee several times, that decision was made, the timing of that decision was made in large part because Mr. Buckingham was leaving the CNMI presumably forever. I don't know when or if we are going to generate a document that would satisfy your desire for a final report. We will comply with our statutory and regulatory obligations. If those obligations demand we write a report, we will do so when we feel it is prudent.
Mr. Hasselback, are you telling the committee that you're going to be relying on the solely or more on the report that was submitted in your submitted by the Office of the Inspector General more than your own report Are you saying that the report from the Office of the Public Auditor would be secondary to this report?
No, ma'am, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that we have sufficient evidence to support criminal charges. That evidence was gathered by a federal agent and shared with our office because it was a joint investigation. I saw at the time that I filed the criminal information no reason to wait, and quite frankly, the job that Agent House did was very good, very thorough, and I believe establishes enough admissible evidence to support the criminal charges I contained in the initial information and the amended information. There is no law, no regulation, or no code of professional conduct that says I cannot rely upon an investigation conducted by a federal agent. If this case goes to trial, I fully intend on calling Agent House as a primary witness in my case in chief.
I yield for now, Mr. Chairman.
Any other members? Representative Torres.
Mr. Hasselback, did you know that the governor wrote a letter to Mr. Pai, the public auditor, on September 23rd, 2010, asking him about the pending sole source to Michael Adler?
Yes, sir. One moment. Let me find that letter so we're both on the same page, please. Sir, are you referring to a letter dated September 23rd, 2010, signed by Governor Fitial? It's about a page and a half long.
Correct.
The copy that I have is dated, has a received stamp from OPA on the 28th of September 2010.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, I am aware of that letter. I have reviewed it carefully.
And I think the OPA, Mr. Pai, responded on October 7th.
That's correct, sir. I have a copy of that letter as well. It's dated October 7th, 2010, signed by Mr. Pai. It's about 4 paragraphs long. I believe that I spoke to the committee about both of these letters previously. However, I'd be happy to answer your questions again.
Before we go any further, do other members of this committee have the reference memos or letters that is being discussed at this point? Ellie, do we have these things on file? Yes? Okay.
For the chair's information, this was part of a supplementary disclosure to the panel brought up on my very first day of testimony. Representative Ogamoro referenced the letters and asked me to get them and bring them to the committee, and I did.
Thank you. So clarified. Please proceed, Mr. Torres.
Did Mr. Pai, the OPA, advises the governor that if there's an unethical or improper for that source sourcing to Mr. Adler?
No, sir. There was, if you'll read the letter dated October 7th, 2010, particularly the last sentence of the first paragraph, and I'll read it for the committee. OPA, however, is not able to provide an opinion on whether this contract meets the requirements for sole source contracts for 2 reasons. And then it outlines those reasons in subsequent paragraphs. So, sir, I would submit to you that any fair reading of this letter to a reasonable person would reveal that the Office of the Public Auditor did not offer any opinion, and in fact says it's not going to offer an opinion for 2 very specific reasons. My understanding is that this was the last communication between our 2 offices on this subject. I'd also like to point out to the committee as well, the September 20, since you asked specifically about an ethics opinion, I'd like to point out that the September 23rd, 2010 letter signed by Governor Fitial and received by our office, to which we responded, never mentions the CNMI Ethics Act anywhere in it. It in fact asks for one thing, and if you read the very last paragraph, the last two sentences of the governor's letter, it's very clear what the governor is asking for. I'll read it for the committee. While I certainly understand that your office is tremendously overwhelmed, the need to secure these contractual services is critical due to the impending government shutdown. Due to the precedent that has been set with respect to the One Economy contract, I am requesting concurrence from the Office of the Public Auditor to source the management of the ARA funds to IPS. Please feel free to contact my office should you have any questions. I believe that any fair reading by a reasonable person of this letter would lead one to the conclusion that the Office of the Public Auditor was being asked to concur with the sole source justification. And again, I believe that any fair reading of the Office of the Public Auditor's response would reveal to an unbiased reader that no opinion was rendered.
That's what I understand. And now that this thing is passed for like over 2 years, it's been brought up to life. And was jeering into Buckingham's behind me, trying to scream, and somebody's trying to put him in jail.
Is that a question, sir?
Statement.
Oh.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, I think I'll yield forward now.
Thank you, Representative Torres. Any further comments from the members?
I have no further comments to make at this point.
Any further comments from the quiet ones on my right?
I yield all my minutes to other members, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hasselback, thank you for your cooperation today.
Thank you, sir.
Many days that you have come to answer questions. I think we are done with you, and you are hereby excused.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good day, sir.
Thank you.